Greetings. Welcome to another episode where Father TJ talks to his camera about spiritual things, specifically spiritual self-care during this time of pandemic. Over the last several weeks to a few months, we have talked about a great number of things, most of which I do not remember. It's kind of one of those instances that's similar to when people come up to me a few months after I've preached a sermon and talk about how great that sermon was and how it impacted them, and I have no idea what they're talking about. I preached that sermon? Are you sure? I don't remember that one. But anyhow, today I'm going to kind of just reflect out loud about my experience, one of my experiences, and one of the aspects of the priesthood that I find myself thinking about a lot these days, and I think it will relate in some way to wherever you're at, wherever it is that you are at. I will admit, and this is going to sound probably terrible, and maybe it is terrible, but it is what it is. That's a wisdom saying that I like. It is what it is. But I will admit that clergy folks, I'm not too terribly fond of hanging out with other clergy people. And I took my collar off and I set it down there because I felt like I kind of needed to if I'm going to say something like that. But it may sound weird as a priest to say that other ministers are not my favorite type of people to hang out with. And in fact, that's putting it quite generously. Clergy are my least favorite type of people to hang out with. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I have this, I just feel like clergy are like manure. We're great when you spread us out, right? To fertilize the land. When you pile us up in a pile, it's just one big stinking pile. That's my official theological, spiritual opinion on the matter, in case you're wondering. But there's just something to clergy culture. I don't know what it is. And I have been in 3 different traditions now as a licensed or ordained minister in some capacity. And it's the same across the board. It doesn't matter the worldview or the tradition. It's all the same. There's this kind of this thing that clergy do where they take the weight of the world upon their shoulders. It's a messiah complex almost. Like the folks who have to fix everything. And sure, like, look at our culture and church culture, regardless of the denomination these days. Churches are in decline. You know, there's not as many people in the pews as there used to be, and there's not as much money in the bank as there used to be, and there's all this tension and all of this brokenness, and it's a confusing time to be a clergy person in any capacity. There's just so much that's going on, and it's hard to know even where to begin when it comes to just fixing things, right? But many of us clergy take the whole responsibility of fixing not just kind of our parishes that we're in, then the problems, but fixing just kind of this whole problem that Christianity finds itself in, having all of the answers and navigating perfectly and seamlessly through, this vocation in this life. And I don't think it's healthy. I just don't think it's helpful. I think it's naive. My mentality coming into St. Paul's has been, I'm going to leave it better than how I found it. I can't fix all of the problems. And St. Paul's, I will say this, St. Paul's is by far the best church I have ever experienced in my life. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. But we still have our issues. And some of those issues are deeply rooted and have been around for decades. I can't come in and fix all of that right out of the gate, especially. And I shouldn't take it upon my shoulders. I shouldn't expect it of myself, and people shouldn't expect it of me. It's a communal thing, right? But we ministers tend to take the weight of the world and all of the problems on ourselves as if we have to be kind of like the messiahs with all the answers. And it's not healthy. It is not healthy. So like in clergy culture, when we get together, usually what it ends up becoming is just a gripe session about all that's wrong, especially with the people in our parishes or the circumstances in our parishes. Like recently, I was on Zoom with some colleagues. And the whole session just turned into a vent session about everything that's going wrong in their parishes. And I was the last person of the group of 6 or 7 that was invited to speak. And I had nothing really to contribute to the conversation. It's not that things were perfect. It's just like, I actually really enjoy doing what I'm doing, and the whole world isn't burning right now for me, right? Even though we're in pandemic time and even things are not as ideal as they could be, everything's okay and it's fine. But I felt almost guilty that I didn't have something negative to contribute about my parish to the conversation. So I almost felt like I needed to make something up. And that concerns me. That concerns me a lot. And I think part of what has happened with a lot of clergy is we become too attached to this whole vocation. Like we can't imagine ourselves being anything other than priests. There's not a level of detachment that needs to be there. And I think part of my saving grace, and I don't attribute this, I don't know where I came across this, I don't know what switched in me to make me believe this or to adopt this mentality. Like somewhere along the ordination process while I was in seminary, I came to the realization that yes, God is calling me to the priesthood. I knew that was the path. I knew that was where everything was unfolding towards, right? I was going to become a priest. But I also knew that if the bishop said no, or something just didn't work out, and I went back to doing construction work, or do the thing that people who spend some time in the ministry do, but then they get out of the ministry and go work HR somewhere, just like Toby from The Office, right? I knew that I would be happy because my identity wasn't bound up with this whole sense of calling and this notion of the priesthood, even though everything in me knew that's where I was going. I knew I would be happy doing something else other than the priesthood. I also knew that I would be very happy being a priest. I'd be happy either way. And there's a lot of freedom in that, a lot of freedom. My identity isn't bound up in this calling. And so, I'm able to admit that I am not a perfect priest. And if I fumble, and I don't take it personally, as if I've just failed God in a miserable way. Or, if the numbers aren't showing, and if, the budget is struggling, and you don't have as many people in the pews as you'd like to have, I don't take it personally, even though I want to do my best to leave the parish in a better place than how I found it. I do, and I work hard. I work really hard. But my identity isn't bound up in it, where I feel like in my working, I'm actually like salvaging my identity, if that makes any sense at all. There's a healthy level of a detachment. You have to be passionate about what you're doing, but it's a paradox. You also have to be detached from it in a way too. And I think this translates into just everyday life for everybody, not just clergy folks. Like, you can't get too bound to a season in life or something that you really enjoy doing. You can celebrate seasons of life, and you can celebrate the fact that maybe you have a vocation, a job, something that you're doing that really fulfills you and really has given you a deep sense of purpose and contributed to your identity in some ways. But the thing is that life changes. In seasons, they come and go. Life ebbs and flows. And the things that perhaps we used to be able to do, we maybe can't do anymore. And if our identity is bound up in that season and in that thing that we were doing back there, and life changes, and we can't do it anymore, then we lose a part of ourselves. And it's not a healthy thing. It's not. And so I think it's very helpful to learn the art of detachment, to hold on to everything in life just a bit loosely. You can hold them in your hands, and you can look at them, and you can value those things for what they are, but also realize that things change, and you need to learn the art of contentment, of happiness, wherever you happen to find yourself. And I think part of the issue is we can always focus on all the things that are wrong. It's very easy as a clergy person to focus on all the things that are wrong, especially right now. I haven't seen my people in the parish in a year, right? Our doors haven't been open in a year. But that's not the guiding principle that defines what I think about during this season of life. I'm just optimistic about the future. I have faith that God will work it all out. And regardless of what happens, I'll be happy, right? it doesn't matter if you're not doing the ideal thing that you want to be doing, and maybe the season of life you find yourself in isn't ideal. If you just look around you, there's still plenty of things to be grateful for, to be happy about, and choosing to focus on those things as opposed to feeling like you have to fix life's situation all the time. It's so freeing, and it's really healing, actually, and it makes you more present to life, right as you're living it. If we're always constantly trying to fix things and desiring a different future for ourselves, it actually makes us kind of more, we're actually dwelling more in this kind of imagined future state than we are in the present moment, and that's not good. We shouldn't live our lives in a way where we're not present to them, regardless of how hard seasons of life can be. There's plenty of greatness to be present to and thankful for. And the way to get to that is to have a healthy level of detachment. As weird as that sounds. So I don't know if any of this made sense. It made sense to me. And as I say every week, it may, even though it makes sense to me, it may not make any sense to you. And that's quite okay. So at the very least, I'm giving you something to disagree with, which in the end has sharpened your thinking. So you're welcome. Thank you for tuning in. God bless. Peace.